All right, folks, Wall Street is coming for crypto. We're going to break this one down in this morning's video. I appreciate everyone for stopping by. I'm going to make my points real quick because I want to play a few minutes of Anthony Scaramucci giving us some insights, and this is incredible. He says, quote, "The Ethereum and Solana are now in the big boys club." Very interesting. And then he comments how Gary Gensler is taking major losses in the court. He doesn't dare mention the Ripple XRP case, but he acknowledges that Gary's been losing, and he says that by the next administration, he's probably going to be gone. And then he gives us his insight into his technical analysis and why he's predicting a $170,000 Bitcoin. And then we conclude his segment by talking about Wall Street selling for us. Basically, Wall Street sells products, and the Wall Street machine is now behind Bitcoin and the broader cryptocurrency space. This is a new reality that we're experiencing, folks, and we're talking about a new wave of liquidity coming in from the biggest institutions in the world, from billions of retail that now is getting exposure to what we call digital assets. Most of them learn about Bitcoin first, but obviously, as many of us have found, there's a few other hidden gems out there. Now, I want to go through it real quick, folks. One quick point on the United States government. The U.S. Treasury to hold the largest ever bond auctions at $70 billion in April to plug budget deficit. Tell me there's a financial crisis without telling me there's a financial crisis. And this is shared here by Ashley Prosper from the Financial Times. So they are set to hold the largest bond auction ever, $70 billion in April. And I don't know if those are, they say bonds, not T-bills. So I don't know what duration those bonds are. But if you ask me, I ain't doing that deal with the devil. Thank you very much. I'm going to pass on that one. Okay, now, in case you missed it from Jake Claver, the White House Office of Science and Technology Policy published a new paper this month outlining critical and emerging technologies. These are considered important for national security, including DLT, digital assets, and digital identity, making it onto the list. So while, we have many of them, probably Joe Biden, who doesn't even understand what this is, right? I shouldn't have made a joke about Joe. Poor Joe, right? Meanwhile, we see, I'm going to have to edit that clip out. Meanwhile, we see that, right, they play around like this is only criminal activity, that's all bad, we're not interested. On the back end, it's national security, right? And we saw the congressional hearings that were taking place this last week and how OFAC and others were talking about how they have rules, laws on the book to basically go after some of the Bitcoin miners, get them to report, especially if they're dealing with any sort of sanctioned entities. And this is where they're coming to clamp down on the Bitcoin miners. Obviously, Gary Gensler has his assault on the crypto asset securities is the new term that he's coined. And we'll talk more on Gary a little bit later. But as far as the institutional demand, I found this tweet. I can't confirm this data, but what I can confirm is that we are seeing massive inflows of Bitcoin, right? So they now have, I believe, almost 200,000 Bitcoin between all of these ETFs. And this is quickly growing. And so this person right here on Twitter, British Hodl, says in 60 days, 200 million will be chasing 450 daily mined Bitcoin, equilibrium price of 444,000 a coin. I don't know what he means by the equilibrium. The point where that evens out and catches up for the demand is what I'm assuming. In 4 years, 200 million will be chasing 225 daily mined Bitcoin. That's after the next halving. And the equilibrium price will be 889,000 a coin. And then in 8 years, we'll be at 112 daily mined Bitcoin at an equilibrium price of 1.8 million. There are two levers at work here, and the only one that can change is the 200 million. And that would be the demand for Bitcoin, right? You only have so much Bitcoin that's being mined daily. And he says 450. I think that Scaramucci in this clip that I'm about to play talks about like 600 or something. I don't know who's right on that. I haven't been keeping tabs on Bitcoin, but nonetheless, I think that what they're overestimating with this tweet that I just read off is I think that the demand falls off. Now, you do have pent up demand that's being released into these Bitcoin spot ETFs. This is folks that didn't have access. They had to go to crypto exchanges like us, right? But maybe they didn't have the ability to invest their 401k, their retirement account, the pensions. just other institutional investors who wanted to invest in an ETF and not in, just buying the digital asset themselves. You see that the pent-up demand is being unleashed on Bitcoin right now, and it's gone up to 52,000, right? That's great. That's fantastic. But I think it's a little much to suggest that we're going to see this demand just continue to grow forever, right? That's not going to be the case. So eventually, and you're seeing around the world, most people actually would rather use Tether than they would Bitcoin. You get further with your adoption when you use stablecoins like USDC and USDT, because the people in these countries can't handle the fluctuations in price. So while the Bitcoin bros think that we can just get everybody to come join the party, right? Many people around the world, they just want a stablecoin. Is the reality of it. And this is why I make the case and why I'm so firm in my thesis on XRP, is because the other thing that you'd want is a neutral bridge currency that you actually can use as an efficient bridge currency to take you from one currency to another, to take you from, whatever issued asset back to your native currency. Now, continuing on with crazy price predictions, Robert Kiyosaki says Bitcoin to 100,000 by June 2024. Robert is well respected by me, and I think that Robert's doing a good job of, turning on the marketing machine in his department and getting everybody excited on Bitcoin. His tweets are very provocative, right? And, the Bitcoin price predictions always do well. So I think that he's in line with how to, garner the attention of the cryptocurrency space. And for a large part, I agree with many Bitcoin folks, right? I agree on the issues, the problems at hand with sound money. It's just as far as opportunity upside as an investment, I think that there's better plays. I respect Bitcoin always, but continuing on with even crazier price predictions and theories. And the reason why I'm showing this is that, to those that want to criticize the XRP community for dreaming big and talking about big prices, I'm showing you big Bitcoin price predictions to show you we're not the only crazy ones that talk about crazy predictions, talk about garnering, complete world domination, which is what Hal Finney and Satoshi were talking about in this email exchange that I'm about to show you, where they talk about a $10 million Bitcoin. That's right, folks. I'm being for real. An amusing thought experiment in 2009 between Hal Finney and Satoshi Nakamoto. How one Bitcoin can reach a value of about 10 million. Here's the email from Hal Finney to Satoshi, okay? And they say, as an amusing thought experiment, imagine that Bitcoin is successful and becomes the dominant payment system in use throughout the world. Then the total value of the currency should be equal to the total value of all wealth in the world. Current estimates of total worldwide household wealth that I have found range from 100 trillion to 300 trillion. With 20 million coins, that gives each coin a value of about 10 million. So you guys can check the math and let me know what you come back with. But, I think that we've talked about crazy markets, where this is taking the total worldwide household wealth. But we've talked about the cross-border payment flows. We've talked about the derivatives market. And when you put all this together, the notional value that you're talking about is in the quadrillions. You're not using the T, $trillion word. You're using the Q, quadrillions. That's not clickbait. That's real facts. It's real numbers. And although it sounds crazy, right, you go through and, when I would run through a situation like this, you say, okay, yeah, total worldwide household is 300 trillion or whatever it may be. What's a realistic percentage of that we're actually going to be able to achieve? It's probably much, nowhere near 100% of all household worth. Well, but everything's going to be denominated in Bitcoin. I don't think that might be a little far-fetched, but maybe the Bitcoin bros can explain that one to me. Next, I want to play this clip here. This is Anthony Scaramucci, and like I said, just going to play a few minutes here, but listen in closely because he says that the broader space is starting to get the respect from Wall Street. And he specifically mentions ETH and Solana outside of Bitcoin are two coins that have now entered the big boys club. And then he says that Gary Gensler, right, has been taking big fat L's in the courts, and he's about to be gone by the next election. The third thing that he mentions is his TA price prediction. it's very interesting. He says you go about 4x what Bitcoin is at the halving, and he's predicting about a 50,000 Bitcoin at the halving in April. And so he's, at that $170,000 price target is where he's at. And then finally, he mentions Wall Street now selling cryptocurrency digital assets for us. So listen in here, folks. This is Anthony Scaramucci on Bloomberg Television.
I do just want to get your thoughts about the recent run-up that we've seen in Bitcoin. I think last time I checked, we're around 52,000, a far cry from 69, but looks like we're headed in that direction.
But a big move from 16, 17, 18,000 towards the end of 2022, which was the annus horribilis for crypto. So, but I think the one thing I would just add on the Coinbase situation, everything's up. It's going to improve the staking on the altcoins, and there's huge margins in that. So even if they lose a little on the exchange traded funds, meaning some of their customers buy the ETF as opposed to just buying Bitcoin, natively on the exchange, they're picking up revenues from the whole lift in the overall market capitalization.
Do you think that, so you think this is going to spread beyond just Bitcoin itself? I know it's already done that to a certain extent, but the narrative has always been, okay, spot Bitcoin ETFs, you don't really need Coinbase, but we forget that there's a whole other ecosystem out there.
So I think what has typically happened is, as you see a swelling in Bitcoin, the grandfather of cryptos, it sort of spills over into the other assets. And so just what happens is you're making profits in Bitcoin, you start to redeploy them into riskier assets. And some of those assets are really not that risky relative to Bitcoin. As an example, Ethereum and Solana are probably now in that big boys club. And so, but listen, you stake with a place like Coinbase because it's safe, it's good,
Now, let me pause Scaramucci there real quick and just say this right now, that I promise you, mark my words, eventually one day we're going to see XRP admitted into the big boy club. Not only by him, but by broader Wall Street, that's finally going to come around, finally admit, oh yeah, we did pick up our little moon bag of XRP, and eventually XRP will be accepted into that big boy club. Mark my words.
Highly good regulatory process inside there. It's probably one of the best run cryptocurrency exchanges in the world. So you feel the safety there, and they do take a reasonable size of the profits as a result of that. And I don't think we should underestimate that.
So Gary Gensler made pretty clear that the SEC was holding its nose as it approved those spot Bitcoin ETFs. What does that mean for the prospect of ETFs backed by other cryptocurrencies like Ether, like anything else?
You are so nice, because to say that he was holding his nose is such a, he had like a vomit bag under the desk, like when he was like, so you were just such a nice person. But
trying to be polite.
What I would say is that he's up against it because he's lost several cases. He will. But would it take another
lawsuit to get there?
I think he will. I think he's decided that the powers that be politically in the elite don't like crypto. They don't like the energy around Bitcoin, and I don't think they want an ETF for Ethereum. And so that May decision, I think, gets pushed. I think it causes another lawsuit. He'll likely lose that lawsuit. And then you're coming up against the election. And so then the real question is, will Mr. Gensler, in a new Joe Biden administration, will he be the SEC chairman? My guess is he probably won't be at that point.
I want to go back to Bitcoin for a moment, because, of course, you made a lot of headlines when you gave a Bitcoin price forecast of $170,000 about 18 months after the halving in April. Given the rally that we've seen, 52,000 above that level, what's your latest price forecast? Are you sticking with that?
I am sticking with that, but the typical thing, what I was trying to say in that podcast was there's a technical analysis that you can do over the past 14 years. The price at the time of the halving, if you multiply that by 4, that's typically where Bitcoin has run to in that cycle. And so I was just using a $50,000 number for April. So this could run up because there's a lot of momentum right now. You guys are seeing that the network is only producing 900 coins a day, and you've got 12 times the demand of that right now, which is why you're seeing a price squeeze to the upside. So I'm going to stick with that price prediction only because I think it's conservative based on where we are right now. And I think people need to understand, look at what happened to NVIDIA, look at what happened to Apple over the last decade. NVIDIA over the last 18 months. It's not impossible now that this asset has been regulated and has this regulatory ETF wrapper around it.
Yeah.
And remember, I've been on Wall Street. This is my 36th year on Wall Street. Wall Street sells product.
Yeah.
And, these products are sold and not bought. And you have armies of people now that are putting these products in people's portfolios.
Yeah.
And it's very limited demand for an asset like Bitcoin.
So there you have it, folks. And, I guess now that I'm looking back at this previous post, they're talking about 450 daily mined Bitcoin. That's going to be after this halving that comes up in April. So right now we're at 900 daily Bitcoin. And like he's mentioning, Wall Street's eating it up right now. There's definitely been pent up demand. It's flooding in and we're seeing a run up. And we highlighted this, right, when this was first coming out. I said, gold and silver, I think, are a precursor of what's to come for crypto, not just for Bitcoin, but for all of the digital asset space, because we saw gold run up 5x after its ETF, and we saw silver run up 10x after its ETF. So if cryptocurrency plays out the same, and let's just run with the Bitcoin bro story that Bitcoin is digital gold, right? We could still see some of these altcoins and some of those ETFs far outpace, maybe outperform, by double, 5x versus a 10x gold versus silver. And so is that kind of what we see in the altcoins? It is. And like you said, when we see this next, if Bitcoin can stabilize a little bit right here, you're already starting to see some of the alts go. And even if we do come back down, like he says, when you take where we're at the halving and you multiply it by 4, that's the pattern that he's found. That sounds about right to me. And for me, I'm more on the 120 to 150,000 price range. But nonetheless, what we're watching right now is Wall Street flood in. They're not just showing up and saying, hi, we're here. And I think that his note about the elite don't like crypto, what he's talking about is the elite control freaks that want to control every aspect of our lives. That's the part of decentralization that they don't like and that they didn't understand. And now they're trying to capture the space with, Gary Gensler being one tentacle, but then you also have other arms of the government as they come in on this digital asset space in every way that they can so that they can control it. And I think that the elites, they've been figuring out their positions behind closed doors. This is why it's been a pet rock. And then all of a sudden it becomes, it's not a pet rock anymore. And we're going to be one of the largest custodians of it at JP Morgan. I'm talking about referring to Jamie Dimon, right? It's a pet rock until we're ready to get our piece of the action. And then we open up the floodgates. And like Scaramucci mentions, then we fire up the Wall Street marketing machine. And they are actively selling these products to every investor that they can get their hands on. Now, you guys know me. I'm just here to report the news. I'm not here to be your financial advisor. But if you need any community resources, they can be found on my website, ZachRector.com. And I appreciate everyone for sharing out our content far and wide. I'll see you in the next one. God bless. I am your host, Zach Rector. I really appreciate all of the love and support. If you want to support the channel, just remember that you can start by smashing that thumbs up for me, sharing this content far and wide, and everything else is at my website.